HTML and CSS are the foundation of modern web design, allowing you to create visually appealing functional web pages. HTML specifically stands for the Hypertext Markup Language, and it is a standard language used to create web pages. And this is what HTML code looks like. This is some of the code that we'll be writing today. It can be used to create headings, paragraphs, images, links, and many more things. So if I head over, for example, to jovian.com, this is a web page. Now on this web page, everything has been crafted using HTML and then styled using CSS. So HTML is used to structure the content and add elements, and then cascading style sheets or CSS is used to describe the presentation of HTML documents. It allows you to control the layout and the appearance by defining styles for elements, and you can configure things like fonts, colors, margins, borders, etc. So today we are going to look at the very basics of HTML and CSS. We are going to start by creating an HTML file, adding code into it using the VS Code editor, viewing it in a browser. We're going to then use some basic HTML tags to create a web page. Then we're also going to use some more HTML tags to structure content on a page, things like headings, lists, paragraphs, etc. Then we're going to add styles using CSS and understand the CSS Box Model for layout. That is the core foundational concept in CSS. And then we're going to style these HTML tags using CSS to replicate the structure of a desired web page. So we'll look at a problem statement and we'll try to replicate the web page that we have in mind using HTML and CSS. And finally, if time permits, we are also going to try and deploy that website to the cloud using an online hosting service. So in just about 2.5 hours from now, you will be in a position where you will have deployed your first website to the cloud. So isn't that exciting? The very first lesson, you'll be deploying your own website. And there are no prerequisites for this tutorial. The best way for you to learn these skills is to follow along as you're watching the lesson. Pause it at various places, follow along, type out all the code yourself. Don't even copy paste, just type everything out and then experiment with it using the exercises that are present in the lesson. Now you can find the completed code for this tutorial here in this GitHub repository. Specifically, you can open up this folder, My First Web Page, and you will find all the code that we are covering today in this folder. So we will explore the basics of HTML and CSS by attempting to solve this problem statement. We will create a web page that showcases job listings for Jovian. At Jovian, we have a growing team, we have a growing user base, we're adding new programs. So we have certain jobs for which we want to hire, but we don't have a jobs page yet. So we're going to try and create a jobs page for Jovian. And on this jobs page, we're going to show a few things. We're going to require our jobs page to have a few things. One is a nav bar at the top showing the Jovian logo. So something like this. This is called a navigation bar or a nav bar. Then we may want a header section displaying a picture and some relevant information about Jovian. So anybody who comes to our jobs page should learn a little bit about the company itself. So we'll have that. Then maybe a list of job openings that include the job designation, location, and maybe salary details. We'll see what we can put in there. And maybe also a link to apply for the job. And then a footer at the bottom of the web page with some important links. So generally at the bottom of any web page in a website, you might have a bunch of links to other web pages on the same website or elsewhere. So we are going to try and build all of this today in the next couple of hours. And we will also attempt to make the page visually appealing and informative. So let's see how far we can get. This is a fairly ambitious problem statement while we are also learning the basics of HTML and CSS. Now, creating your first web page is actually quite easy. All you need to do is simply create a file, put some text into it, and then open that file within a web browser. And while you can use any text editor to create the file and put some text into it, web developers often use editors that are better suited for programming because they have certain features that will help you write code in various programming languages easily. And these are called code editors, or sometimes also called integrated development environments. Okay, so in this tutorial for today, we are going to use a code editor called Visual Studio Code. Now you can download it for free. It is a free and open source tool. So you can download it by going to code.visualstudio.com. All the links are present in the lesson resources and the lesson notebook. Now, based on which operating system you're working on, you'll have to download it for that operating system. You can see that it is available for all major operating systems. And it is developed by Microsoft, so it also has great Windows support. And you should download it. And once it is downloaded, just double click the installer and follow the instructions to install it on your computer. And once it's installed, we can then start creating our very first web page. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, the first thing we need to do is create a project folder. Typically, whenever you're working on a project, it's a good idea to create a folder where you're going to put all the files so that you don't pollute your desktop or your downloads folder. So let me go in here and let me create a new folder. So I'm going to call this folder, let's see, I'm going to call this folder My First Web Page. Okay, I've just used hyphens here, My First Web Page. If you can't see, let me just zoom in here a little bit. Yeah, so you should be able to see it now, My First Web Page. All right, so I've just used hyphens here, My First Web Page, that is the name of the folder. And now we want to open up this folder in VS Code. So let us first open Visual Studio Code or VS Code. Let me just type Visual Studio Code here and open up Visual Studio Code. Okay, so now I've opened up Visual Studio Code. This is what its user interface looks like. You might also see something like this. You might see a sidebar here as well. So that depends. You can hide or show the sidebar. You have options to show this over here. Now, what we want to do in Visual Studio Code is open up this folder. Okay, so you want to say File, Open Folder. So go into the File menu, select Open Folder. And I'm going to come into my desktop and select this folder, My First Web Page. Don't double click on it. Just select it and then click Open. Okay. So now you will immediately see that you will see the folder name here in the sidebar, My First Web Page. I hope you can see it. And then you will see this welcome screen. I'm going to close this welcome screen. But now this folder is open in VS Code. So VS Code is showing us this folder. And what I can do is I can now create a file within this folder directly from VS Code. So if I just go here, I should see a new button. And in this new button, using this new button, I can create a new file. And I'm going to create a file called webpage.html. So any web page has the .html extension, just like images have a .jpg extension or Excel files have .xls extension. So web pages have the .html extension. Okay. So now I've created this file called webpage.html and I can verify that this file is actually present here. Webpage.html, you can see that when I open that window, when I open that folder, I can see that the file webpage.html has been created. Okay. Now let me just get this onto the right. Now, once I've created this file webpage.html and let me close the sidebar, I'm going to put some text into it. So let me just say hello HTML. All right. So I've just written the words hello HTML into webpage.html. All right. Now here's what I'm going to do. I am going to now open this file webpage.html in the browser. So I'm going to say open with, and I'm going to select the browser that I'm using, or sometimes you can also just double click and it will automatically open in Google Chrome. But just to be safe, I'm opening it with Brave browser. That's the browser that I'm using. And you can see as soon as I opened it, the same text that I entered into the webpage.html file, the exact same text showed up here. You can see I'm just zooming into about 200% so that you can see it more clearly. Okay. Let's keep it at 200. All right. So hello HTML is what I typed here and hello HTML is what showed up when I opened webpage.html in the web browser. So that's it. That's how you create a web page. You just create a text file, call it something.html and then open it in a web browser and you have a web page. However, you want to put some kind of a structure into the web page because we don't just want to write text. We can paste a lot of text, but it'll all just be text on the screen. So that is where you use something called tags. So first, let me just put in some code here. So I'm going to create this tag called HTML. And you can see that this tag starts with a less than symbol or an arrow bracket and ends with an arrow bracket. And every tag has a tag name. In this case, this tag has the name HTML. Let me zoom in further. So it has the name HTML and every tag generally has a closing tag. Okay, so this is the opening HTML tag and HTML is always the outermost tag in any web page. And then there is this closing HTML tag. And the difference between the opening and the closing tag is this slash character before the tag name. Okay. So any HTML page or any web page is built up using tags. These tags are used to create structure within the page. Okay. Now within an HTML tag, I'm going to put in a head tag. Okay. We'll talk about what these tags do in just a second. And again, VS Code does this nice thing that as soon as you create an opening tag, it automatically adds a closing tag for you. And that is why developers use these code editors. Okay. And then another tag that I'm going to put in here is called the body tag. Okay. So now we have a HTML tag, which is the outermost tag. Inside it, we have the head tag and the body tag. And let me just save that for a second and reload. And you can see now all the content has gone away. So now nothing is showing up on the browser because we've not put any content into the page. The first thing I'm going to do is inside the head tag, I'm going to put in a title tag. Okay. So I've just typed title. I've created an opening tag and VS Code added a closing tag for me. And let me just say my first web page here inside the title. Let me save that. Let me come back here into the browser, reload. And now you will notice that nothing has happened here on the page. But if you notice carefully, the browser tab, the browser heading, the browser tab here, it has the title, my first web page. Okay. So it has the title, my first web page. And you can zoom in here and I can zoom in here and I can show you that it has a title, my first web page. All right. Now, let us add something here in the body. So I'm going to just add something called a div here in the body. So div is again another tag that is used to put some content into the body. And let me just put here hello HTML and CSS. Okay. So this is what a typical web page or a typical HTML document looks like. It contains a bunch of tags and then it contains tags within tags and each tag has a specific purpose. Okay. So now let me put that in and let me reload. And now you can see that here we have hello HTML and CSS. And then you can go back and change this. Let's say, let me make it hello HTML / CSS and let me reload. Now it says hello HTML / CSS. Okay. So this is how you construct a web page. You put in some tags and then you open the web page in a web browser. All right. So that's the basics of how you create an HTML page. You launch VS Code, open up the project folder within VS Code, and then put some code into it. This is HTML code. So we put in an HTML tag, head tag, title, and body, and then save the file once you've added the code and then open it with a browser. And this is what it looks like. Okay. Now let's understand HTML tags a little better. So tags are the building blocks of HTML and they are used to describe the structure and the content of a web page. Now, normally every tag will have an opening tag, like the HTML tag had an opening tag like this over here. And it will also have a corresponding closing tag. And sometimes tags can have attributes. And these attributes are used to provide more information to the browser or modify the behavior of a particular tag. For example, the HTML tag has this attribute called lang, which is simply written within the opening tag itself. And then the attribute lang is given a value en, which means English. So here what we're doing is we're indicating to the browser that this particular HTML page is written in the English language. So now that browser can use it for, let's say, setting up a translation, automatic translation tool or something like that, right? So an attribute is used to provide some additional information about that tag or modify the behavior of that tag. And we look at a lot of attributes with time. So I can say here, for example, HTML lang equal to en. And that doesn't do anything visible, but that does inform the browser that this is an English web page. All right. Now, so that's about tags. And a tag can contain one or more children. So like the head and the body are called the children of the HTML tag. And a tag along with its children together is called an element. Okay. So the tag is simply this piece. This is the opening tag and this is the closing tag. Everything inside a tag is called its children, which is again other tags. And then a tag together with its children is called an element. So this whole thing is an element. And then this is an element. And then this is an element. So every tag along with its children is an element. And then whatever is inside a tag is called children. Okay, so these are just some terminology that you'll see when you're reading about HTML and CSS. All right. Now, tags contain attributes. We talked about that, and there are various different tags to create headings, paragraphs, lists, images, etc. And we look at those in just a bit. Now, one thing I want to mention is that HTML is the outermost tag. However, in many web pages, you will find a doc type declaration just above the HTML tag. So you will find something like this. You will find a doc type. Let me zoom in here. So you will find doc type HTML at the top of most web pages. And that is just a good convention that is followed, that at the top of every HTML web page, it's a good idea to just put this doc type HTML. Okay. And this is just something that you copy paste at the top of every HTML web page, and you can literally just go on Google and search doc type declaration. Okay. And you can find this link, HTML doc type declaration, and you can just copy this and put it at the top of each HTML page. And if you want to understand what this does, I encourage you to go through this W3 Schools link. It's not important. It's just a convention that you want to put in, because there have been multiple versions of HTML, and this is a way for you to indicate that you want to use the latest version of HTML to the browser. Okay. Now we have the doc type, then we have a bunch of these tags. Now the HTML tag is the outermost tag. We already talked about that. And the HTML tag is typically only contains two other tags, the head tag and the body tag. And it has a lang attribute, and it has some other attributes also that can be set. And you will see a doc type declaration just above HTML. So that's the HTML tag. Okay. Then we have the head and title tags, which are the tags that we are seeing here. So the head tag is a container tag in HTML that often doesn't contain any content that is going to be visible on the page exactly, but it generally contains some information that is passed on to the browser, and that is useful for the browser, and that is also useful when you're sharing this link with somebody else. So for example, it contains the title tag. We put in the title tag over here in the head, and the title tag is used to set the title of the browser tab. Similarly, there are some meta tags, and then some meta image tags, etc. And these are used to set the preview image and the description that shows up when you share this link on a social platform, or when this is seen by a search engine or something like that. Okay. So the head tag is very useful. It is also used to sometimes include maybe style sheets, CSS files, and sometimes used to include scripts. We'll cover all of these. Don't worry if these terms don't make sense just yet. For now, we are just using the title tag within head. So within head, we just have the title tag. And then we have the body tag. Now, within any HTML page, you have a body tag, and the body tag defines the main content of the HTML document. It is usually placed after the head tag, and it contains all the visible elements of a web page. Okay. And the body tag can also include other HTML tags like headings, paragraphs, links, etc. And here is the key thing. Here is the key difference between just putting some text into a file versus putting it in the body tag and putting it in HTML tags. You can add styling, you can add colors, fonts, you can change the layout, and you can even add interactivity using JavaScript and CSS. Right? So all of these things are applied within the elements in the body tag to change the appearance and functionality of the web page, which is what we're going to do today. So here is an example of a web page with some content within the body tag. So here there is an H1. Which is a heading tag. We'll talk about it. There is a paragraph tag, there is an image tag, and there is a tag. So I will not paste these right now, but I'll actually leave these as an exercise. So maybe just try and paste this into an HTML page, open it in the web browser, and see what you can come up with. Okay. So that is the body tag. It is what contains all the content of the web page that we are going to be building today. Then we have the div tag. Okay, now you notice that inside the body, I did not directly put in hello HTML and CSS. I created a div. So I didn't have to do this. I could have just put it into the body itself. But the div tag is typically an HTML element that is used to group and organize other HTML elements together. For example, you can create one piece of content here in this first div. This is some content. And then you can have a second piece of content in this second div. And then you can have maybe a third piece of content, which is itself divided into multiple pieces of content in this third div. Okay. So div stands for division, and it literally creates a division on the page. Vertically speaking, it kind of divides the page vertically, essentially, you can think about it. And it is used to divide or group content into logical sections. And it is a block level element, which means that it takes up the full width. When you add a div tag, it takes up the full width. And then the next div tag is going to appear below it. And the next div tag is going to appear below it, and so on. And it does not have its own style or semantic meaning or anything, but it is used with CSS for styling. Okay. So the div tag is something that we will attach a lot of CSS properties into to style the web page. So let us look at an example of a web page containing some div tags. Okay. So here is the content that we're going to put in or type in one by one. So first, let us create a div tag and let us say this is some content. Okay. So now we have put in some content into div tag and it says this is some content as we might expect. Then let me create another div tag and let me say this is a second line of content. Okay. Now if I reload the page, you will notice that this content showed up below this content. So that is what the div tag is creating. It is basically creating a division within the page. So this content shows up in this area and then this content shows up below it in this area. Now notice that I can go into the next line. I can type this isn't a third line. Now I'm not creating a new div tag. I'm still using the second div tag. But this time you can see that even though I've typed this content on a new line, it is still showing up on the same line as the second line. Okay. So here is the importance of div. If you want to split content vertically on a web page, then you want to create divs and each div is going to create a new vertical section or new vertical division within the web page. Okay. And if you simply create multiple lines of content like this, all of that is going to show up in a straight line. That is not necessarily going to show up one below the other. Now here is another example. Now this time I have a div tag, but inside the div, I'm then creating more divs. So some more lines. Okay. So now I have this third div tag. And now in this third div tag, I have again another div tag, three more div tags, one around each word. So now even though all these three div tags are on the same line within the HTML source code, you can see that each inner div tag takes up its own vertical space. Okay. So that's what I want to convey here, that as you want to keep building, as you want to keep adding content below the existing content on a web page, you should be creating new div tags. Okay. So that is the div tag. And those are the most basic HTML tags. Now we've just looked at what? The HTML tag, we've looked at the head and title tags, we've looked at the body tag, we have looked at the div tag, and I'll encourage you to experiment with this. What we really want to do though is maybe first figure out what we want our web page to look like. Okay. So when you're building a web page, it's a good idea to first plan ahead and create what is called a wireframe. And this is what a wireframe for a web page look like. It is just a rough drawing of what the web page should look like. Okay, that's what we typically call a wireframe. Like you don't put in colors, you don't put in exact fonts and sizes of fonts, etc. You just put a rough diagram of the structure of the page, and you can use that as a visual guide while you're writing the HTML and CSS. Okay. Now, if you don't already have a design to work with, then sometimes it can be confusing if you're trying to design your web page as you're trying to code it. So having a wireframe is going to help a lot. And you can create a wireframe using pen and paper, or you can use digital whiteboards like excalibur.com. So excalibur.com is a digital whiteboard. So this is what it looks like. And here on this digital whiteboard, you can create boxes, you can create circles, you can create lines, you can add text, and you can do a bunch of things to create your wireframe. Okay, so you can use a digital whiteboard, any one of your choice, but I like using excalibur.com. And the idea here is to separate the design and the implementation process to help you focus on one aspect of the development at a time. Okay. Now, I will note, however, that professional web developers work with a detailed design mockup of the page and not generally wireframes, because these design mockups or these design specifications are often created by UI UX designers with a standardized design system. So normally at a company, you will receive a full-fledged design, and that design will have all the colors, all the fonts and everything specified there, and you'll be working from that. But for your own personal project, it's okay to maybe just do a quick wireframe and then figure out the design over time. Okay. So let's recall the problem statement and then create a wireframe for the problem statement. We want to create a web page that showcases job listings for Jovian. And it includes a nav bar at the top of the page showing the Jovian logo. It includes a header section displaying a picture and some relevant information. Then it includes a list of job openings that includes the job designation, location, and then it includes a footer at the bottom of the web page with some important links. Okay. So keeping these requirements in mind, let us try to first design very broad, very rough, in a very rough fashion. Let's try to design what this web page should look like. Okay. So I'm just going to zoom to an area of Excalibur where I can actually design. Now you might see a bunch of these controls here. So when you're actually drawing, you might have these controls and you can always hide them. So there's an option called Zen mode here. But here, let's say this is what our web page is going to look like. Okay. Now at the top of this web page, we want a Jovian logo. So I'm just going to put a box here indicating the Jovian logo, and I'm just going to put the word Jovian here. All right. And so now that's the Jovian logo that is going to show up at the top of the page. And this is going to be the navigation bar. So maybe let me just put a separator between this and the rest of the page. Then let us, we want maybe a banner image, a header section with a banner image and some information about Jovian. So let's say this is going to be an image. So I'm just going to draw maybe like some hills here. We'll figure out something better than a hills and a sun. But here we're going to put an image, and then below the image, maybe we could have a section called About Jovian. Because when somebody visits our job page, we also want to tell them a little bit about Jovian. So let me come in here and let me just put in About Jovian. And then maybe on the left here, we want a picture of the team. So here we're going to have a team picture, maybe a bunch of people here. All right. Very, very rough drawing. And here on the right here and on the left, maybe we have some information about Jovian. Okay. So some info about Jovian. Now, I'll show you a quick trick. Sometimes you need to generate or you need to get a bunch of text to fill the page. Now that you can do using this tool called lorem ipsum. So lorem ipsum.io. Okay, lorem ipsum.io, and the link is in the notebook, is a quick tool to generate as much text as you need, as many paragraphs of text as you need. So I'm just going to copy a bunch of this random text. This doesn't mean anything. I'm just going to put that in here, and let me just split it into multiple lines. Okay. So yeah, just about that. And maybe also let me reduce its size a little bit. So now we have this. Let me change its color. Yeah. Now we have this About Jovian section, this nice About Jovian section over here, and let's move all this here as well. So one nice thing about digital whiteboards is you can move some of this stuff around. And then let us put a section called Job Opportunities. Okay. And in this section, Job Opportunities, I'm going to just make that black in color once again. In this section called Job Opportunities, let's make that a little bigger, like that. Let us put in a few job roles. So we have a job role for a front-end developer. And then we have a job role, and this is in Bengaluru, India. And maybe we want like an apply button here. Okay, or an apply link or apply button or something. Let's put that here. Small apply button. Let's make this a little smaller, like that. So that is what our a single job role looks like. And now once again, the good thing about these digital whiteboards is I can just take this and I can create a copy and create a second job role and copy and create a third job role. All right. So let's call this backend developer, and let's call this data scientist. And maybe let's also put something like remote here. And let me put Mumbai, India here, right? And apart from the jobs, we maybe also want to have a footer at the bottom of the page. So I'm going to just add a separation here. And maybe I'm just going to add a few links. So one link to courses, one link to programs, and one link to YouTube. Okay, and just put that in here. Courses, programs, YouTube. Let's line these up. So these are going to be our footer links. And finally, right at the bottom, I'm just going to add a copyright notice. Copyright 2023 Jovian. And let's make that a little smaller and put that in here as well. Okay, so yeah, just in about 4 or 5 minutes, we have just created a wireframe for what our web page should look like. All right, and then you can take this whole thing and you can copy it as PNG and save it somewhere. Maybe you can send it to a coworker for review. You can just like copy that as a PNG, or I think you also have the option to export it. You can go in here and you can actually export the image as well. So this is a good thing to do anytime you're building a web page. First, it's a good idea to just go ahead and create a wireframe using a digital whiteboard and something that you can modify easily as well. Okay. So now that we have this wireframe, you can see here, this is what the wireframe looks like. We have the nav bar, we have an image, we have an about Jovian section, we have the job opportunities, we have an apply button or apply link, and then we have a footer at the bottom. Okay, so I encourage you to again try and replicate this wireframe on your own using Excalibur, or maybe try adding a additional section here and there just to see if you can do this on your own. Okay, so you should be following along with this lesson, pausing the video, following along, pausing the video, following along, and trying to make changes here and there just to experiment with things. Okay, so now that we have created this wireframe, we can now use this wireframe as a reference to add content in our HTML page. Okay, so right now we don't have any useful content in our HTML page, so we can start adding the content one by one. And the first thing that we're going to add is headings. So let's figure out what headings we have within our web page. So here we have a couple of headings. We have this heading called About Jovian. We have this heading called Job Opportunities. And then I could even consider these as headings of each of the jobs. Okay. So heading is generally just some big text on the page. It is maybe the start of a section. It is maybe a start of a subsection, or it is maybe the most important piece of text in a particular element on the page. So I'm going to consider About Jovian, Job Opportunities, and Front-End Developer, Back-End Developer, Data Scientist as headings. Now, there are various kinds of headings in HTML. In fact, specifically, there are 6 heading tags. These tags are H1 to H6, and H1 is the highest or the biggest heading tag, and H6 is the lowest. Now, heading should always be used in a logical order and should accurately describe the content on the page. So if you're using H1, then for subsections, you should be using H2, and then for subsections, you should be using H3 and so on. Don't use an H2 as the heading of the entire page and an H1 in the middle of the page, because that is going to confuse people. Even though you can change their font sizes from the default, but still it's logically, it makes sense for you to use the headings that are use headings appropriately within the page. So H1 should be used for the most important heading, H2 for the subheading, and so on. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's add some headings into our page. So the first thing I'm going to do is clear all of this. Let me also just, let's see, let me get rid of this piece over here. Yeah, so the first thing I've done is I've cleared out all the existing content on the page, and let me save that, and that has all gone away. So let's add the headings one by one. The biggest heading on my page is About Jovian. So let me add that. And once I do that, you can see that, okay, now I have a nice big About Jovian section. The next heading on the page is Job Opportunities. Great. And then we have 3 of these jobs. So you can see here we have Front-End Developer, Back-End Developer, Data Scientist. So let's go H3, Front-End Developer, H3, Back-End Developer, and H3, Data Scientist. Okay, I can go up to H6, but I'm just going to use these 3 headings here. Now we have this nice logical separation between headings. So we have About Jovian, then we have Job Opportunities, and then we have these 3 job roles. And all these 3 job roles should use the same header ideally, because they're indicating the same level of hierarchy. Okay, so that is how you create headings. Really straightforward. Just put H1, H2, H3 and keep going. All right. So now we've added headings, and this is what that looks like. Great. And our page is slowly starting to take shape. Not exactly what we're looking for just yet, but it's getting there. Next is there are specific text. There are specific tags for adding text. Specifically, we have a couple of tags. One is a p tag or a paragraph tag, and the second is a span tag. And both are used to define text in HTML. So this is some text. You can see that we are going to add up below about Joven, and this is added using the p tag. So the p tag defines a paragraph of text, and it is typically used for longer sections of text that form a distinct block. So if you have an entire paragraph, that is what you should put into a p tag. And then the span tag defines a small section of text. Typically, if you have maybe just a few words or maybe a single line somewhere within a div, you can use it. And it is typically used for inline styling. Let's say you have a longer piece of text and within it you want to make some specific piece of text bigger or of a different color, then you would wrap that around a span. And we look at examples as we go along. But p and span are the two tags that are used to create text on a web page. Okay, of course, you don't need to use a span or a p. You can directly put a text within the div tag as you saw already. But p and span give one, they semantically inform the browser that now inside this tag there is going to be text. And second, the div is going to automatically create a vertical separation. The span doesn't do that. So sometimes if you want text to maybe join together and show up in a single line, you can use a span. And the p tag has some spacing before and after, so it automatically adds some separation between the text and the rest of the content. Okay, so let's use the p tag to add some description below about Jovian. So here is the description that we're going to add. At Jovian, we're on a mission to build the world's most highly reputed technical university, and we're building it completely online. Let me change that to it. And we're building it completely online. We offer several beginner-friendly courses that are taken by 300,000 plus registered users. Okay, so right below the H1, right below the section here, I can put in all of this content and I can just click save. And then I reload this and you can see that this p tag has been added. And in this p tag, we have this basic text. Now, somebody had a question, why not use a div tag here? Well, if I just use a div tag, you can see that the amount of, well, it works just fine. But as you noticed, as we put in multiple paragraphs of text, you will notice that the p tag automatically adds some gap between paragraphs. So that is going to be the difference between using a p tag versus using a div tag. Okay. All right. So now we've added a p tag. Then the other place where we can possibly use a span is within the job opportunities section. Notice that under each job opportunity, we have also put in the location of the job. So let's put that location of a job using a span. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to first I'm going to create a span, and I'm going to take the span and the h3 and put that in a div tag, because each job is logically separated. So each job we want it to show up in a logically separated area. That is why we're putting a div around the job. Okay. And don't worry if this doesn't make sense, if you're wondering when should I put a div around something, when should I not put a div around something. Well, you just experiment with it. HTML is all about experimentation. All right. So here we have an h3 tag, and then I'm going to put a span, and I'm going to put in Bengaluru, India. Then I'm going to put in another div here, and I'm going to move this backend developer role here, and I'm going to put in a span. I'm going to put in, let's put remote here. And I'm going to put in another div here, and I'm going to put in the third h3 here, and I'm going to put in a span. Let's put Mumbai, India here. Okay, so now we have added these job opportunities locations, and we put each of the job opportunities plus location in a div tag. Now, one quick thing I want to show you is, let's say you're typing and maybe things go a little bit haywire, and you don't have this nice indentation or this nice logical structure visible anymore. Just right click and select format document. And that is going to automatically arrange all the tags in this nice fashion that tags that are children of an outer tag are automatically going to get some indentation or some space before them. And then it's also going to split up the lines nicely. So anytime you want, you can right click and select format document. And there's also a keyboard shortcut to do it. And then you can save it. And let's reload now. And all right, so now it's starting to look a little better. Now we have the front-end developer role, and under it we have Bengaluru, India. Then we have back-end developer. Under it we have remote, and data scientist. Under it we have Mumbai. Great. So our notebook, our web page is starting to take shape pretty nicely. Okay, so now we have this information. Now, apart from this, there are also several smaller modifier tags. So there's a tag called B in case you want to make something bold within a paragraph. There's a tag called I in case you want to make something italic. There is a tag called U in case you want to underline something. Now, you can use these tags in between. I'll show you an example. Let's say we want to highlight 300,000 plus. I'm just going to put it in a B tag. So there's an opening B tag and then there is a closing B tag. And you can see that 300,000 is now bold. However, these specific tags are slowly falling out of fashion. What is being done instead is you just put a span around a specific piece of text and then use CSS to style it. And we'll look at CSS soon. So just know that although you have all these tags, the use of these modified tags is now considered a bit outdated and it is recommended to use CSS styles instead. Okay. So, but still as an exercise, I will encourage you to just play around with these tags and check them out. Okay, perfect. So now we have looked at text, we have looked at headings, we have looked at spans as well. Next, let us look at lists in HTML. So almost every web page that you might have seen contains some form of lists. And there are two types of lists in HTML specifically. There are more, but these are the two that are commonly used. One is an unordered HTML list, and an unordered HTML list is simply a bullet list. It does not have any ordering. It is ordered, but it doesn't have numbers for the elements or the items within the list. And then you have an ordered HTML list. An ordered HTML list simply has numbers associated with each of the items. And special HTML tags are used to create lists which allow for presentation of information in an organized and structured manner. So there are two types of lists, as I said, unordered. And the unordered lists are created using the UL tag. And then list items within an unordered list are created using the LI tag. And bullet points are used to denote the list items. And you can change the appearance of bullet points using CSS or using some attributes as well. Similarly, you have ordered lists, and ordered lists are created using the OL tag. So OL is ordered list, UL is unordered list. And list items are added using the LI tag. And numbers or characters are used to denote list items. Okay, and the appearance of the numbers can be customized using CSS or using attributes within the HTML element itself. Now you can also nest lists within each other. So you can have maybe a list and then each list item can have a sub list inside it and so on. So you can do a bunch of interesting things, but it's important to close all your tags properly to ensure that the page is rendered properly. Otherwise, the browser is going to run into issues and things are going to look a little weird. Okay, so remember we had a footer on our page. Let's try and maybe, this looks like a list of links. So let's try and maybe create an unordered list for the footer elements. So I'm going to come in here. And again, I'm going to just create a logical separation by creating a div. And I'm going to create a UL or unordered list. And then in the unordered list, I'm going to have three list items. So I have a list item called courses. And I have a list item called programs. And I have a list item called YouTube. Okay. And then below this, I also have this copyright thing. So you can see we have this thing, copyright 2023 Jovian. So I need the copyright character. So I'm just going to go on Google and I'm just going to search copyright symbol. Okay, this is the copyright symbol and I can just go ahead and copy it from here and paste it. So this is how you get special characters in your HTML. You just search the special character online and then you can copy it from there and put it in. So copyright 2023 Jovian. Okay, now let's reload the page. And just like that, you can see here at the bottom of the page, we have courses, programs, YouTube, and we have copyright 2023 Jovian. Great. So our page is taking shape. And apart from this, let's also add an ordered list somewhere. So maybe in the About Jovian section in this region, let's maybe also list the programs that we offer. So let's add another paragraph here. Let's see, what do we want to do? Well, we add another paragraph and we're going to say we also offer 2 industry-focused bootcamps. So let's create another paragraph P. And let us put in this text. We also offer 2 industry-focused bootcamps. And in this paragraph, let us create an ordered list because we have 2 programs and we can list them one by one. So let's create an LI here, 1, or actually I don't need to put the number one. The number one is going to come automatically. Full stack developer bootcamp. And then the second one is data science bootcamp. Okay, I think we want Jovian full stack developer bootcamp and Jovian data science bootcamp. All right. So now you can see that we offer two industry focused bootcamps, the Jovian full stack developer bootcamp and the Jovian data science bootcamp. And the numbers 1 and 2 have been added automatically, just as it was done in the case of the footer items, where here it just added a bunch of bullet points. Great. So far so good. We have added some lists as well, and that has added some more content on the page. Next up, we can add some links. Now, since we have added some footer, we had added some footer items. We also added maybe a couple of programs. So we can now link these to other pages. You know that any web page on the internet typically contains links to other pages, and that is how you navigate a website. Now, links can be to the same website. Links can be to other web pages on the internet. It is completely up to you. But links in HTML are created using the A tag. The A tag is used to create hyperlinks. And the A tag must have an href attribute to specify the URL of the destination page. And the text that is displayed as the link is placed between the opening and closing A tags. And let's say you want to link to open in a new tab, then you can use the target attribute to specify where the link page should open. Okay, so let's see that step by step. Let's first do this for the Jovian full stack developer bootcamp. So what we want to do is, we don't just want to show this text Jovian full stack developer bootcamp. We actually wanted to point to the program application page, because let's say somebody is applying for a job, but they also want to see what kind of programs we offer. It would be a good idea to maybe just link that from here. So let me go to www.jovian.com, and I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to find the section full stack developer bootcamp. I'm going to grab the link of that. And let's come back here and let's create an A tag inside the LI item. So inside the list item, we are creating an A tag. So A, and then you provide an href, href. Href is the attribute. And then the attribute value is always put within double quotes. So within these double quotes, I'm going to paste the link. Okay. And then I'm going to close the A tag. And I'm going to take the closing tag and put it outside the text. Okay. So now you have A href, and then you have the href of you have the URL of the Jovian full stack developer bootcamp, and then you're closing the A tag inside the LI tag. So remember, your tags have to be matched up properly. When you cannot put the A tag, closing A tag outside the LI tag, because that is going to cause some problems. So just be careful as you're doing this. And now if I reload the page, you can see that clicking on this is going to take me to the full stack developer bootcamp page. Great. Let me grab the data science bootcamp page as well. So data science bootcamp, copy that link. And once again, let's put that on a new line. Let's create an A tag here, A href equals, data science bootcamp. And let's take the closing A tag and let's put it here. And let's save that. And now we have the Jovian data science bootcamp linked from here as well. And that is how easy it is to add links within a web page. Let's go ahead and maybe let's also link a bunch of these footer links. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, let's see, A href equals, let me just point it to jovian.com/learn for now. Yeah. All right. And let me also point the second one to jovian.com/learn. Okay, so both the courses and the programs footer links for now are just going to go to the same page, jovian.com/learn. And then the third footer link, let me point that to our YouTube channel. So A href equals https youtube.com/jovianhq. Okay. Let me just format that. So let's say format document, and that's going to just indent things a little better. All right, so now we have this courses link that opens the courses, and we have the programs link that opens the programs. But of course, both are going to the same place. But what we have here is this particular section within the page. It actually has an ID. So this section has an ID called courses. So if we actually type something like this, #courses at the end of the URL, okay, that doesn't seem to work. Never mind. Yep. So yeah, we have linked the courses, we've linked the programs, and we've linked the YouTube channel. Now, one thing that I want to do here is I also want to add I want these links to open in a new tab. I don't want to change the current tab, because if somebody is looking for jobs, I don't want to get distracted and lose track of the jobs page. So I'm just going to add target equals underscore blank. Okay. So anytime, what does this mean? What does underscore blank mean? Why do you need that underscore? Don't worry about all that. This is a very standard syntax. Anytime you need to open a link in a new tab, just put target equals underscore blank as an additional attribute in your A tag. Okay, that's all it is used for. There are other targets that are possible as well, but underscore blank is typically what you should be using in most cases. Okay, so now if I click on courses, that is going to open it in a new tab. Okay, then if I click on programs, that is going to open it in a new tab. If I click on YouTube, that's going to open it in a new tab. All right, so now we've added links and our page is shaping up quite well. Now we have links on the page as well. What next? What else is missing from our page? So we've added headings, we've added some text, we've added some jobs as well. We've added footer links. I think the images are missing. So let's add the images as well. How do you add images in HTML? Well, so the way to add images in HTML is using the img tag. So there's a tag called img, and you can use that to add images. Now, just like links are added using the A tag, A is short for anchor. So links are added using the anchor tag or A tag, and you have to specify an href attribute. Similarly, images are added using the img tag, and you can specify the src attribute with the location of the image. The image could be on your computer, the image could be next to the web page basically, or the image could be somewhere on the internet. Both of these work. You can just specify the location of the image using the src attribute. Apart from that, because images also typically have, you should also indicate what that image is about. This is for screen readers and for search engines, etc. So you can also add an alt attribute or an alt attribute, which is used to provide an alternative text for the image, which is displayed if the image is not loaded, and it is also read by screen readers for people who are unable to see the image, and it is also read automatically by search engines to improve the visibility of your page on search. Now the width and height attributes of the image can also be set using the width attribute and the height attribute, and you can specify the width or height of the image as pixels on the screen. So if you know the resolution of your screen, the resolution of your screen is typically given in pixels. For example, 1280 pixels horizontally and 720 pixels vertically, something like that. So you can specify the height and width of the image in pixels as well. Okay, now the last thing is that the image tag or the img tag is a self-closing tag, which means that it does not require a closing tag. You just put the img tag, you put its src, you put its alt attribute, you put its width, you put its height, and if you want, and that's it. You don't have to put a closing tag, you don't have to put anything within the image tag as children. Okay, so let's check out some images that we can possibly use. We need a couple of images, one image here as the banner that's going to show up on the entire page left to right, and then one image here which is going to show up here on the right. Okay, so how can we add, how can you find these images? Well, one good place to find great photos that you can use for free is Unsplash. So unsplash.com is a great place. So I'm going to search for career here, and let me scroll down to find an image that might be good as a banner. I think this image looks good. So this image is a nice image that I could use as a banner on the page. Maybe not the entire height of the image, but maybe like just this section would be good. So I'm just going to go here and I'm going to say download free. And from here, I'm selecting the medium size. Okay. So that is going to download a JPG file, and I'm going to come into my desktop, go into the folder where I actually have the webpage.html file and put in the image file here. So let me just call it banner.jpg. Okay, so now we've created a banner.jpg file. So that is going to be the banner that we use on the page. Let me grab another image which is going to show up here. Maybe here I want to show a team picture. So let me close this and let me search for team. Let's see if we can find a good team image. Or let's search for maybe people working. Okay, that looks good. Not the Jovian team, but never mind. We can still put it on the careers page. So let's download this also in medium quality. So let's go and call this team.jpg. All right. So now if I open up the sidebar once again, by the way, you can open the sidebar using this button here, or you can also just use Command B, or I believe it's Control B on Windows. So you can see that along with webpage.html, we now have these files team.jpg and banner.jpg. And now we can add these images into our HTML page. So the first image, the banner.jpg image, is going to show up above the heading about Jovian. So I'm just going to add img src equals and paste. Okay, I'm just going to put in the file name here, banner.jpg. Remember, this could also be a URL of an image on the cloud or somewhere on the internet, but for now the image is right here next to the file that I have. So I can just put that, and let me just put the alt text here, and the alt text I'm going to put here is banner. This is just the banner, and I'm going to close this tag. Let me now reload the page, and you can see that the image has been added here, but it's too big. Let me just shorten the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say height equals, and I'm going to set the height of the image to, let's say, 360 pixels. So when I say height equals 360 and reload, now you can see that the height of the image has been reduced to 360 pixels. Okay, I can reduce it further, maybe just for now, and we can make it bigger later. Yeah, now the height of the image has been reduced. So now we have this image. Of course, it's not laid out how we want, but it's there in the right place. And then the second team image is going to show up on the right side. So in some sense, right is next or after. So I'm just going to put that second image after this p tag before job opportunities. So I'm going to say img src equals team.jpg and alt equals team. And let me give it a height of 200. Okay, let's reload that. Okay, so now we have the image here as well. Great. So again, what you should be doing is pausing this video, watching maybe 5 minutes, and then following along, typing out everything on your own and build this step by step. The best way to become a better programmer is to just write a lot of code. And even if you're writing the code that you're seeing on the screen, you should be asking yourself what that code means, and you should be experimenting with it a little bit. And if something breaks, you should be searching online and maybe asking us a question. Okay, that is how you're supposed to do this. It's not enough to just watch this. But at this point, I feel like we have all the content that we require on the page. It's just not laid out properly. All right, so we have all the content. Let's see. Yeah, we have all the content we needed. We have this about Jovian, we have this image. Okay, maybe we don't have this navbar logo right now. How about we fix that sometime later? We'll figure it out. But we have job opportunities. We have this image here. We have this footer, and we have this copyright section. Now, one thing I want to mention about HTML tags and CSS, HTML and CSS in general, is that there is so much here, so many different tags and everything, that you shouldn't go about trying to learn every single tag and every single attribute of every tag before you start building web pages, because then you will just be doing that for years. You should take the opposite approach, where you start trying to build something, and whenever you feel that, okay, you're not able to build it with the tags you already know, then go and search online to see if there is a certain tag or maybe a certain other CSS property that is going to help you do it. And over time, the things that are going to be used most frequently are going to become second nature to you, and you won't need to look them up. That is what I do. I still look up some fairly basic stuff on CSS even after 15 plus years of web development, and I do this every week. So one exercise for you is to check out this tutorial on htmldog.com on the various beginner and intermediate level tags. So you can check out the HTML beginner tutorial and the HTML intermediate tutorial. So once you're done with this lesson itself, check this out. At the very least, go through all these different types of tags And if you have the time, you can also go through advanced, but that is something that we're going to cover in a future lesson anyway. Okay, but this is a good place for you to practice. Another good place for you to practice is the w3schools.com website. This contains a great HTML tutorial. So if you want to learn about a specific type of HTML tag, just go find it in the sidebar here and go ahead and do it. We're not going to look at every single HTML tag here because that is defeating the point. The reason we are here is because we want to build good web pages. Okay. So let's move forward. We are halfway there. Let's go ahead and style the web page. Now, Cascading Style Sheets or CSS is used to describe the presentation of HTML documents. It allows you to control layout and it allows you to control the appearance by defining styles for elements such as fonts, colors, margins, borders, and more. So let's look at some different ways to apply CSS styles. There are a few ways to do this and we'll do this by attempting to just center this about Jovian heading. We just want to bring it into the center of the page, horizontally speaking. We want to bring it in the horizontal center like that. And let's see how we can achieve that using CSS. Okay. So the first way to do it is using something called inline styles. Now in inline styles, you can achieve this simply using the style attribute, and you can put that directly within whatever HTML tag you're trying to style. So let's say we have h1 and we want to style it. So you want to set the style, and then within the style attribute, we want to set this as the value. So this is what a CSS declaration looks like. So what you do is you declare certain properties about that tag using CSS. You have a CSS property. So here the property that you are fixing is called text align, and there are hundreds of such properties. But text align is the property that is used to decide the alignment of the text. Should the text be aligned on the left, center, or right? And then you have a colon. The colon separates the property from the value. And then you have a value. Okay. So all of that goes inside the double quotes that are used to enclose the value of the attribute. So yeah, so you have the CSS property, and then you have a colon, and then you have the value, and then you have a semicolon to end the declaration. And then you can have multiple declarations here. Let's say apart from center aligning it, you also want to change the color to indigo. That is something that you can do here as well. Okay, so that is the simplest way to apply CSS to some HTML tags. You simply go into the HTML and then you add a style attribute. Now within the style attribute, you add a property. So let's say we want to do text align. And for now, let me put center here. And then you put, so you have the property colon, you have the value. Generally, CSS values do not require quotations. Some of them do, most of them don't. And then you put a semicolon, and let me save that. And let's just reload that here. And just like that, this is centered. Now you can experiment. You can go and change this to right, and you can see that that should bring it to the right of the page. And again, you can go back and change it to center, and that should bring it to the center of the page. Okay. Let me also add a color. So color is added using the color attribute, and let me set the color to indigo. You can create any color you want using something called an RGB or a hex formula, but there are some named colors within CSS, and you can always look these up. So you can search CSS named colors. So these colors are recognized by these colors are already recognized by every browser. So these are all the colors that are already available in CSS, and you can use all of these color names whenever you want directly. Okay, for example, I could use dark blue instead of indigo, and that would work as well. And let me just reload the page here, and you can see that now the content is centered on the page. Just the About Jovian heading is centered on the page, and it has the color dark blue. Okay, if you want to create colors that are not named already in CSS, then we'll talk about that in the next lesson. All right. So that is one way to add styles. This is called the inline style, and you simply add a bunch of CSS declarations in the style attribute. The other thing, because you might want to add a bunch of different styles, or you might want to add the same set of styles to multiple tags, is to use a style tag. So you can create a style tag within the head or the body, and then you can put some CSS code within the style tag. Let me create a style tag within the head here. So I'm just going to create style. And now inside the style tag, the first thing you need to put in is a selector, because now you no longer know where you want to apply the style to, unlike this attribute which was associated with a tag already. So you need to put in a selector. Okay, so there are many ways to select a particular or a bunch of HTML tags on the page. The easiest way to select a bunch of tags is by the tag name. So when you say h1 and then you open these braces or curly brackets, what you're saying that whatever I put within these curly brackets or these braces should be applied to all the h1 tags on the page. Now, of course, here we have just one h1 tag, but if you had multiple of those, then it would apply to multiple h1 tags. But let me get rid of the inline style here. So now that the inline style is gone, you can see it's back to this position. And now in the style tag, I'm just going to write text align center. And now one of the benefits of using a style tag is you can use multiple lines. You can make your code easier to read instead of stuffing a bunch of styles within the same attribute. And color, what was that, deep blue or dark blue? Yeah. Okay, so now we have about Jovian, which is at the center of the page horizontally, and it has the dark blue color. Okay, now notice that this style did not get applied to any other element on the page, but suppose this second element on the page, job opportunities, was also an h1 tag. You will notice now that job opportunities is also receiving the same style that the first h1 received. Okay, so that is the benefit of using the style tag. You don't have to retype the same style over and over for each tag. But let's revert that back. For now, we are going to make this an h2. Okay, so that is the second way to do it, which is, let's just revert that. Yeah, this is fine. So that is the second way to do it, which is using the style tag. So in the style tag, you have a selector, and then you have this bracket, and then you have a property, and then you have a property value. Okay, and then you close the bracket, and of course you can have multiple properties that you can apply using to the tags that have been selected using this selector. And the simplest selector is just a tag. We look at other selectors as well. Now, yet another way to apply CSS to an HTML file is to create a separate file containing CSS. This is very popular because that way you can put all your styles in a single file and all your HTML in a single file, and then link the .css file within the HTML page using the link tag. Okay, so you use a link tag to specify within the HTML page that the styles should be picked up from this particular CSS file. So let's do this. Let's create a file styles.css. Let's first get rid of this h1, all of that, and let's get rid of the style tag. Okay, and you can see that the style is gone. Now let us open up the sidebar once again, and let us create a new file, styles.css. And now in this styles.css file, let us add h1, and let us put text align center, and let us put color dark blue. Okay, and let's save that, and let's reload the page. Nothing happened because we've not connected the CSS file with the HTML file. So let's come back here, and now I don't need the sidebar anymore. Let's add a link here. So link is a tag, special tag. This is typically used for adding style sheets, and it has a structure like this. So you say rel equals style sheet. You basically specify what is the relevance of this link to this page. So style sheet, or what is the relation of this link to this page, style sheet, and then you say href equal to styles.css. Okay, and that's it. And again, you don't need a closing tag. This is a self-closing tag, so there are a lot of self-closing tags in HTML. Now this href can be a CSS file that is sitting right next to your web page, or it could be in a subfolder. Let's say it was in a folder called CSS, then you could put it under CSS/styles.css, or you could also specify something on the internet. So that is what is done typically with frameworks like Bootstrap. Somebody has put up a bunch of styles on the internet, and we simply include it, link it to our page using the link tag. And notice that the link tag is different from the A tag, which is the anchor tag, which is used to add links on the web page. The link tag is used to simply link style sheets. It's a bit confusing, the terminology, because of how HTML evolved, but that's what it is. Okay. So now we have link rel equals style sheet, styles.css. Let's reload the page, and once again, this is now back to the center, and it has the deep blue color. Okay. So those are the three ways in which you add CSS. You have the style attribute, you have the style tag, and then you have CSS files. Now, one thing I want to mention is CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and inline styles take precedence over style tags, and style tags, I believe, take precedence over the external external files, and there are also other ways in which precedence is decided. So for example, like if I went in here and I added a style tag, I added a style attribute, and I changed the color to black again, you will notice that even though the style.css file says color dark blue, because I've specified the style explicitly on the h1 tag, that takes precedence and that is going to apply the black color to it. Okay, so keep that in mind. This can be sometimes confusing, and generally speaking, keep things as simple as possible so that you don't run into all these issues. Okay, so now that we've added CSS, let's maybe look at what are some other ways in which we can select specific elements and then apply styles to them. So when using the style tag or a separate CSS file, CSS properties can be applied to multiple desired elements on the page using three types of selectors. One is the tag selector. This is something that we've already seen. For example, we've done this text line center and color deep blue or dark blue for the h1 tag. The second is the ID attribute. So typically what you can do is you can set the ID attribute for a particular tag and then use the hash prefix within CSS to select it. Okay, so I can do this. I can add an ID for this banner.jpg image. So I can just say ID equals banner. And generally, as a rule, there should be only one element with a specific ID on a page. You can have multiple and the browser won't complain, but just as a rule, semantically speaking, you should have one element with a particular ID on a page. Okay, so ID should be a unique identifier. So now we have banner, and now we can select the banner element. So now if I said img, that would apply to all the images on the page, right? If I said img, that would apply to all images on the page, but now I only want to apply to the tag which has the ID banner, and that is why I have this hash or pound character. And now I can set something like width 100%. Okay. And now you can see that this image has a width of 100%. Width 100% simply means occupy the entire space available horizontally. Okay, even if we resize the page, you can see that this image automatically resizes. Of course, there is an issue here that this image is getting stretched. We'll fix the stretch in just a bit. But at the very least, we are able to apply the width of 100% to just this specific image and not to this image. So that is the second way to select an HTML tag and apply some CSS styles to it. Then the third way to select an HTML tag is using a class. Now, sometimes what you might have is several tags which you want to style at once, and all these tags have to be styled using the same set of styles. So here is an example. Let's say I add location. Let's say I add here. No, I have location somewhere here. Let's say I look at the location here. Yeah, so I have locations here. I have location for the front-end developer role. I have location for the remote developer role. I have or the back-end developer role and the data scientist role. Let's say I want to make the color of the location gray. So I can do this. I can say span, and I can say class equals location. Okay, and let me go in and let me add that here as well. Span class equals location, span class equals location. So there may be many spans on the page. You can see that there is a span right here at the very bottom as well. But these three particular spans have the class location. And now I can apply some styles to specifically these three spans by using dot location. So I can say dot location. Dot is used to indicate a class. So you can either select a tag where you don't need any prefix, or you can select an ID, which is hash, or you can select using a dot, which is a class. And now I can say color gray. Okay. And let me reload the page. And now you can see here we have Bengaluru, India, remote, and Mumbai, India. So this is applied, this color is applied specifically to these specific sections. Okay. Now you might ask, okay, how do I know when I should use color, when I should use text align, when I should use what? The simplest way is to just go on google.com and search, okay, how to center text in CSS. And you can say it uses the text align property. But now we also have tools like ChatGPT, where you don't actually have to go and search this on Google and browse various web pages. So this is something that I've been using a lot these days. You can see that I have a bunch of conversations here already with ChatGPT regarding HTML, but you can just go into ChatGPT or chat.openai.com and you can search how to center text in CSS. Okay. And it is going to tell you that it's going to come up with an answer for that. It's maybe also going to come up with an example, and you can ask it some follow-up questions as well. Okay. Let's give it a second. Maybe it will come up with, yeah. To center text in CSS, you can use the text align property and set its value to center. Okay. And it's showing you an example as well. Right, and that's it. So this is great. It works really well. It doesn't always give you the right answer, but you could ask it a couple of things and you can try it out. It's a good starting point whenever you face an issue to go ahead and ask in ChatGPT. In fact, I'll encourage you, some of the questions you've been posting on Zoom, try posting them to ChatGPT, and you might be surprised at how well it can answer these questions. Okay, so that is about the different ways in which you can select things. Now, I encourage you to learn more and experiment with various types of CSS selectors. What you can also do is you can combine selectors of various types to select a specific set of elements that match all the conditions. For example, let's say you have certain divs with the class location and you have certain spans with the class location, and you only want to apply these settings to the span with the class location, then you can say span dot location. And I believe that is going to, or span dot location, and I believe that is going to just select the spans which have the class dot location. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to tell you before we go ahead and actually style the rest of the page is the CSS Box Model. The CSS Box Model describes how HTML elements are rendered as rectangular boxes in a web page. Okay? And the box for any HTML element is composed of several layers that determine the layout and the sizing of the element. So let us create, there are a few components to the box model. There is the content, there is the padding, there is the border, and there is the margin. We're going to understand all of these terms, and we'll do that by creating another web page just so that we can experiment with the box model. So I'm going to open up the sidebar here and open up another page called boxmodel.jpg. Okay, there it is, boxmodel.jpg. Oh, sorry, boxmodel.html. Let me rename that. Let me create another page called boxmodel.html. Okay, and I can open up boxmodel.html here in my web page, in my web browser, like that. Just double click on it. Now that opens up boxmodel.html for me. And now inside this, let me start putting in some content. So HTML, let me put in the doc type declaration as well. You can see that VS Code auto completes the doc type declaration. It's nice. So let me add head. Let me add a title here. So CSS Box Model. And let me add the body here. And let me add a couple of divs. So let me add a div called first. Let me add another div called second. And let me give both of these divs a class each. So let me call this box1. By the way, for class names, you can put hyphens in between. So in CSS, whenever you're using class names or IDs, you can put hyphens. Let me call this box2. Okay, and let's reload that. Let me zoom in a little bit. 200 is good enough. Yeah. So you can see that we have content as we expect, first and second. Okay, let me add a style tag here. And for box1, I'm going to set some styles. And then for box 2, I'm going to set some styles. Okay, so no change here so far. Now the first thing I want to point out is, what does the content of a div look like? Well, let me add a background color. So the way you add background color is you just start typing and VS Code shows you. So let me add a background color. Let me add the background color aqua for box 1. And let's add a background color, let's see, beige for box 2. And let's reload that. And now you can see that each of these boxes, or each of these divs, and a div is essentially a box which occupies the full width of the page mostly. Each of these boxes have a background color. One has the background color aqua and one has the background color beige. Okay, just first notice that the content of the box occupies the entire width by default when you create a div. Okay, you can see that there is some empty white space around. That is because the body tag, which is the outermost tag on the page, contains some margin and padding, which I'm going to, or some internal spacing, which I'm going to just set to 0 for now. We'll understand these terms margin and padding in just a second. Okay, yeah. So now you can see we have first and second. We have box 1, which is first, and box 2, which is second. So you have the actual content, which is the innermost component of the box. And right now our boxes just have content. They don't have anything else. No border, margin, padding, nothing. Now the content itself can be controlled using the height and the width properties. Of course, if you put in a lot of content, the height will automatically expand, but I can also set the height specifically. I can say this should have the height 240 px, and this is how you specify lengths in CSS. You specify a number and then you specify px. Now you can also specify in inches, you can also specify in percentages and all, but in the current case, I'm just going to use px. Okay, 240 seems too big. Let me just set it to 40 px right now. Yeah. Now we've set the height to maybe 80 px. Okay, so now we've set the height of the first container or the first box to 80 px, and let's set the height of the second box as well. Height 60 px. So the height of the second box is set as well. So far our boxes just have a content, nothing special. Now the next thing that we can add is something called a padding. Now the padding is the space around the content. So you have the content and then you have padding, which is the space around the content. Okay. So let me add padding 20 px and reload the page. And now you can see that we have this box first, and the content itself is of height 80, but then around it there is this additional space of 20 px. Okay, you can by the way, you can just comment out something, or you can disable some CSS property simply by putting it under these /* commands. And you can do this using the command /. Okay, command plus / is going to comment something out. You can see without the padding, this is the size, and then with the padding, this is the size, and clearly it is added more. We have added some space before the on the left, and also you'll notice on the right as well if you try to actually do something with it. Okay, so let's say we set a width. I can also set a width here, width 100 px. Again, you can see that this is the structure, or this is the content of the box. Without padding, this is what it looks like, and with padding, it is added around the content. So padding is space around the content, but the key thing about padding is that the background color or the background image or whatever also applies to the padding. Okay. Now, next thing that you can do is you can set a border. So you can set a border, and you can set a border of, let's say, 1 pixel, and let's just reload. Nothing happens, because when you're setting a border, you need to specify not just the border width, you also need to specify what kind of border you need, and typically the border that you need is like a line border, which is solid, and you also need to specify what is the color of the border. Okay, so 1 px solid blue, that is what I'm setting as the border of the box. Okay, so now you can see that outside of the padding, a border has been added, which is blue in color. Let's make that 10 pixels. So now we have a 10 pixel border, and you can see once again the size of the entire box has grown. So first we have the content, and then around the content we have the padding, which is indistinguishable because it has the same background, but it is space, you can clearly see. And then around the padding we have the border. By the way, you can also add a border radius here. Let's say you can add a border radius of 20 pixels, and a pixel is simply 1 point on the screen. Okay, and you can just play around with the pixel values when you're experimenting, and over time you'll get a sense of what pixel values make sense for the web page you're working on. Okay, but I'll remove the border radius for now. So now we've added a height, we've added a width, we've added a border. So we have the content, and then we have the padding, and these two are indistinguishable because they have the same background. Then we have the border, and the border has its own color. It can match the background, it can be different, but it's going to show up separately. Then you can add some space outside the border as well. Okay, and that is called the margin. So margin and padding are the two most confusing things for when they're getting started with CSS. So I hope this is going to clarify. So let's say margin 20 px. And when we add a margin of 20 px, you can see that outside the border, 20 pixels have been added left and right around the entire box. Okay. So the CSS box model basically tells you that you can get some content, then put some padding around it, and that'll have the same background, and then add a border around it, and then add a margin around it, which is going to space it away from the other elements on the page. Okay. Now, with border and margin, padding and margin, you can actually use a different border side. You can use a different border width or a padding width on each side. So for example, you could say something like this: padding left is 10px, padding right is 100px, padding top is 20px, and padding bottom is 30px. Okay, let's just disable that. I'm just commenting it out, or basically this is done using command plus slash. Okay, and you can see now we have some padding here, and then we have some padding here, which seems to be higher, and then we are going to have some padding at the bottom as well. You'll be able to see it more accurately if I hide. So there's higher padding at the bottom, lowest padding at the left, and then there is some medium padding here, and then there is of course a lot of padding here. Without the right padding, it's going to be different, right? So that is one thing you can do. You can actually specify padding properties for each side separately, or you can also just specify for all sides directly here. So you can say 10px left padding, 100px right padding, 20px. Sorry, you have left. No, I'm not sure. Well, I think you start from the tab. You start from the top. So padding property order. Yeah, so the first padding applies to the top, the second to the right, the third to the left, and the third to the bottom, and then the last one to the left. Okay, so instead of padding left, right, bottom, top, bottom, you can have padding, and then you can specify what padding you want for the top, what padding you want for the right, what padding you want for the bottom, and what padding you want for the left. So 20px. Okay, and that is going to set the padding top, right, left, top, right, bottom, left. Okay, clockwise order starting from 12 o'clock. So that is padding top, right, bottom, left. And similarly, you can specify margin separately as well. So you can say 20px at the top, 30px on the right, 50px at the bottom, and 100px on the left. And that is our margin applied properly. Okay. Now, one thing you can also do is, let's say your top and bottom margins are equal, or top and bottom paddings are equal, then you can keep them the same. So you can do this. You can say margin padding 10px and 100px. So the 10 is going to get applied to top and bottom, and then the 100px is going to get applied to left and right. Okay, again, top, bottom, left, right. If you put just two values, it is going to repeat those two values. Okay, top, right, left, bottom, clockwise order, top, right, left, bottom. Always get confused. All right, so that is margin and padding. Now, here's one interesting thing I want to point out though. I hope this is all clear, and you can also, of course, go say border bottom width is 30px, and that is going to just change the border bottom width. Now, here's one interesting thing I want to point out. Let's say we give this a padding as well, padding 20px. Okay, so now it has some padding, and let's say we give it a border 10px solid red. So now it has the second box has a border as well. Now let us give it some margin. Specifically, let me give it some margin top. Okay, so notice, keep your eyes here, and I'm just going to add a margin top of 20px. And let me just save that and reload. You can see nothing happened. So what happens is that margins between consecutive elements can collapse into each other. Okay, so what happens is this has a margin bottom of 50px. You can see here it's coming from here. It has a margin bottom of 50 pixels, and this has a margin top of 10 pixels. So when you have two elements side by side or one above the other, and both of them have margins, then both those margins collapse into each other, and only the bigger of the margins is maintained. Okay, so even if I had, let's say, margin 20px all around and reload this page, you can see that a margin got added here, a margin got added here, a margin got added here, but a margin did not get added here because this margin is shared with the margin of the above element. Okay, so that's something that you should keep in mind, that margins of successive elements collapse. Don't worry if you forget this, you're going to figure it out when you build your web pages anyway. Here's another thing that I want to tell you. You can use another margin setting called auto. So let's say I set margin top to be 20 pixels, margin right to be auto, margin bottom to be 30 pixels, and margin left to be auto. What happens is, and I also set a width for this. Let me set the width to 80px. So you can see what happened, that the width constrained how much space the div can take up because you've set a width properly. And then the margin on the top and bottom apply as usual. But because we've set the margin left and right to auto, both of those are automatically adjusted to be equal. And this is a very powerful thing. This doesn't work with top and bottom. This works with left and right only. If you set the left and right margin to auto, what that does is that centers the div horizontally on the page. You can see as I change the size of the browser, the second div stays in the center. So that's a good neat trick to center a div horizontally on a page. Just set the margin to auto for left and right. All right. So that's about the CSS box model. And generally speaking, if you have a doubt about where a particular space or margin or padding is coming from, here's what you can do. Let me just zoom. Let me just make this full screen for once. And you can right click on an element, and this works in Chrome or Brave browser, doesn't work in Safari, I believe. But right click on an element and click inspect. And when you click inspect, the browser is going to show you the actual HTML structure of the page. So you can go into any web page on the internet, you can right click and you can inspect and you can study the HTML source code of the page. You can see here it has all the entire style, it has the entire body, div, all of that. And when you hover over a particular div, it shows you what that div looks like. And specifically the green area, the green area that you're seeing, that is the content of the div, including the padding. And then the orange area that you're seeing, that is generally the margin of the div. Okay. You can see the orange area is the margin and the green area is the content. You can also come in here on the right and you can study all the styles that are applying to this particular component. And you can actually look at the box model for that particular. So if you select box 1, you can see its box model here. You can see that it has the size 100 by 80 and it is highlighted. And it has a padding of 10 at the top, 100 at the right, and then 10 at the bottom and 100 on the left. And you can see it has a border of 10 on each side. And finally, it has these margins 20, 30, 50, and 100 on each side. Okay. So that is one great way for you to explore the CSS properties. If you scroll up, you can also see what are all the CSS properties that are applied here. You can actually turn off these CSS properties, or you can add additional CSS properties. For example, you can say text align center, and that is going to apply that additional CSS property. So this is a great way to just experiment with your web page in the browser itself before you go back and make some change in your code. Okay. And if you reload the page, all of these changes will go away. But the box model is useful to explore. Then the CSS properties are useful to explore, and you can also add additional properties, or you can change the values of specific properties. Let's say instead of aqua, I want to change this to gold. I can do that here as well. And again, all of this is just changing in the browser. It's not going to go and save anything. All right. So that's an interesting way for you to explore web pages. By the way, if you're not able to see the box model, let me just turn this off here. Yeah, so this is the box model. You can see that if you scroll up, you can see here that you have the box model. You can see the margin, you can see the border, you can see the padding, and you can see the size of the box itself. Okay, that is the CSS box model. Okay, so let's go back into the page webpage.html, and let's also open up styles.css. So let's go back to styles.css. By the way, you can use Command P within VS Code to open styles.css. VS Code is really nice for coding. It makes your job really, really easy. You can also close or collapse some of these HTML tags in case you don't want to see them. And that way you can reduce the structure of your page. So I'm just opening everything for now, but you can do that if you want. Okay, and let's go back here to my first web page. And let us now try and achieve this layout step by step. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is go into styles.css. Right at the very top, I'm going to go into body, and I'm going to set a few things right, because every browser has its own setup of the body, its own margin and padding. You can see here that there is some white space around this image, even though I've set its width to 100%. So within the body, I'm just going to set margin as 0. And I'm going to set padding as 0 as well. Great. So now this is completely out there, touching the edges. Okay. One other thing that I want to do in the body is I don't like this font which has these things sticking out of the J. You can see right at the top, it has this old look. This is called a serif font. This small piece sticking out of the J, this thing over here is called a serif, and similarly this is called a serif. So this is what is called a serif font. Generally speaking, most modern websites are built using sans serif fonts. So I'm just going to go in and change the font. Now the way you set the font is by setting the font family. And there are many font families that are available on the internet. By default, browsers support several font families, and then your operating system may have certain font families, and then you can include new font families from the internet from a resource like Google Fonts, and we'll do all of those things. But for now, I'm just going to say sans serif. Okay. What that does is if I reload the page, you can see that now it looks a lot more modern. Now it doesn't have those things sticking out of the J and out of the B and all. So that's one other thing that we've done. Let me just zoom out a little bit. Okay, so now we've done that. Let's start fixing things, or let's start implementing the wireframe by applying the styles step by step. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a header. So I'm going to go into webpage.html, and here right at the top, I'm going to create a div, and I'm going to give it the ID navbar. Okay, this is going to be the nav bar right at the top. So over here, and inside this, I'm going to need an image. I'm going to put that image in just a second, but let us give some styles to the nav bar. So let's go in here. Let's add, I've given it the ID nav bar, so I can select it using hash, and let me then set the height, or let me just give some padding to the nav bar. Let me give it a padding of 8 pixels. Let's just set it to 8 pixels for now. Okay, nothing happened. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there is. So that is a nav bar right there. It has 8 pixels of padding. That is why it's just showing up like that. Let's now put an image under it. So image src. What is going to be the location of the image? Well, I have picked out a Jovian image logo here. So I have this image hosted online. Okay, so whenever you're using an image from the internet, make sure that you're actually getting the link to the image itself and not the link to a page containing the image. For example, this page over here contains the image, but I shouldn't put this in the src because then the browser is going to try to fetch this entire page as an image. No. So you can do two things. Right click, if you want to include an image from the internet on your web page, right click and say copy image address, and then just put that here in src. Or you can right click and say open image in new tab, and then grab the URL of just that image. Okay, always open the image in a new tab and then grab the URL. That is the safest way to do it. All right, so img src equals that, and I'm just going to give it an alt because that's a good practice. So I'm just going to say Jovian logo, and I'm going to give it ID logo. All right, and now this image should show up here, but it's obviously too big. Let's go in here and let us set the, so we have the logo, which is an image. Let us set its height to 32px. Okay, that looks nice. Maybe even 30px. And remember, this is zoomed in. I've actually zoomed it to about 150%. On your side, it may actually look a little smaller. All right, so that is starting to look good. Is there a margin for this nav bar? Let's set the margin to 0. Let's make sure that there is no margin here. Okay, there's no margin. And this is looking good. So now we have this nice, it's looking a bit unequal. You can see on the top and at the bottom, we have unequal space. So we can verify why there is this unequal space by checking the nav bar. And looks like, well, looks fine to me. Okay, I have no idea why this is unequal. That is something in CSS. Sometimes you have to figure out ways to fix. But in any case, I think one way we could do this is maybe just chuck this into a div. No, that doesn't do it. Oh, that's the wrong thing. maybe I can just set the height directly here. So height equals, what is the height we need for the image? 30px. So let me just set the height to 30 here directly. Sometimes that tends to do the trick. And let me remove the height from here. So I've just set the height directly. Okay, still doesn't do it. So you're going to run into these issues in CSS where something is slightly off, and I normally just keep these towards the end so that I don't worry about them immediately. But in any case, now we have the navbar in order, and then let us fix this image. So this image looks fine, but the only trouble here is that the image is stretching. Okay. Now, what I want you to do, what I want this image to do instead is just to cover the entire area that is available to this image instead of stretching. And the way you can do that is by adding something called an object fit into the image. Okay, again, something that you can look up. So this image has the ID banner. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add for banner, I'm going to set object fit cover. Okay, and now you can see that whether I zoom it in or whether I increase or decrease the size of the web page, the aspect ratio of the image isn't changing. So this is the way you fix your stretchy images. You simply set object fit cover whenever you see that an image is stretching. Okay. So that takes care of our navbar, that takes care of our banner. Fine, let's fix the about Jovian. I think we don't need the dark blue color. I'm actually okay with the black color. And now here we have these two things. So we have the left and we have the right. So we want to show two divs side by side, each taking half the screen. And again, this is something that I would search online. I would say how to show two divs side by side with same width. And you can see I've searched this already. I think this one was one that I found useful. So yeah, you can explore this a little bit, but I'm just going to go ahead and show you the solution here. Whenever you need to show two divs side by side, what you need to do is first make sure that this content and this content both are within a div. So let's take, let's go to About Jovian, and under About Jovian, first let's create a div called description. Let's give it the ID, about. Okay, this div is going to capture everything under the about section. And then let's create two divs inside it. Let's give this the ID description. And this is going to be the description. And then let's create another div. Let's give this div the ID team. And this is going to be the team image. Okay. So we have created two divs. One is called description and one is called team. Now by default, divs are going to show up one below the other in HTML. If you want to change that, here is a quick trick you can apply. If you want the divs inside a particular outer div to flow not horizontally but vertically, then what you can do is go in, and this outer div is called about. So I'm going to just go into about. So I'm selecting the outer div with the ID about, and I'm going to just set display flex. Okay, we're going to learn about the flex display in a lot of detail later on, but the quickest or the easiest reason to use flex is to change the orientation of the divs inside an outer div from vertical to horizontal. Okay, and I reload that, and you can see now we have description and team image coming side by side. Now here's what I can do. I can set the width for description and team. Okay, so I can do something like this. So we have description, and I can set width 50%. What I wanted to do is occupy 50% of the area of the parent div. And similarly, we have this team image or this team div, and I want that to occupy 50% as well. Okay, and now you can see that description takes up 50%. If I added a background to it, you'll be able to see. So let me add a background just to show you. Yeah, so you can see around description, there is this background. So description takes up 50% and the team image takes up 50%. And of course, now I can go in and I can put these two pieces of content inside those divs. Okay, So I have this p tag with this ol and all of that. So let me just grab that p tag and cut that and put this in the place of description. Okay, and let me just right click here and indent. I think it should be formatted already. And now you can see that this p tag contains the data, or shows this p tag shows the information on the left half. Similarly, we can take the image now. This is the team image, and we can put that here in the team section. Okay, now we have the team image on the right. All right, so that's one thing that I want to point out to you, that what you should do is you should first try to create a layout using a couple of empty divs, maybe even add background colors and borders to them just so that things are super clear. And once you've created the layout with those empty divs, especially horizontal layouts, then put the content inside, because otherwise you might just lose track and become confused. But now once you put the content inside later, you have actually already fixed all of this. So you have fixed what the description and team should be laid out as, and then the content inside can be laid out independently. Okay, so build your web page step by step in these steps. Okay, let's maybe clean this up a little bit further. Let's see. So maybe this team image, this can have a border radius. So this, it's looking too sharp. Let me just give this an ID, team image, and let me come in here, team image, and let me give it a border radius. Let's give it a border radius of 5 pixels. Again, experiment with it, trial and error. But yeah, 5 pixels looks good. I think I would like to have maybe some space here. So maybe I can go in and I can add some padding into team. So let me come into team and add, or let me come into description and add some padding. Let me add a padding of 8 pixels. Okay, so now I've added a padding, and maybe let me add this padding only on the left and right. So let me keep the padding top and bottom as 0, and let me add that padding. But you can see here that there seems to be some space above this as well, and I believe that is because of this paragraph tag. Because this paragraph tag generally has some space above, and I can verify this by clicking inspect and verifying that in description this paragraph tag has a margin above. So I can just set for this particular paragraph tag style equals margin 0 or margin top. So when you're specifying a 0 margin, you don't need to say px, you can just say margin. Okay, great. So the page is starting to look pretty good, I would say. One issue here is that if I extend this forward, looks like I have a, for this team image, looks like I have a width set. Let me get rid of that width here, or a height for the team image. Where is the team image over here? Yeah, this is the team image. I think I have a height set for it. Let me get rid of the height that I've set. And now it ends up taking up the entire space. So maybe what I can do is I can just come back in here under team or under team image, and I can set the height to, or I can simply set the width to 100% of the parent, which is half the div. Okay, so that's nice. Now it is taking up the entire space inside the inner div, and it is expanding in size based on that. But as the page gets bigger and bigger, this content becomes too wide. So maybe I want to limit the overall width of this description, right? So overall width of the about section itself, right? So the about section, I don't want it to become too big. The about section should, maybe I just want to restrict it to this region, generally speaking. So what I can do is I can set a max width. I can set a max width. Now the max width is the maximum width that this particular section can take. So max width, let me set it to 800 px, and let me reload the page. So now you can see that even as we make the page smaller, both of these are going to take half the space. And as we make the page bigger, it's going to stop at 800 pixels. But of course, it would be nice for this to be centered on the screen. So that's where I can also use that margin trick. I can say margin 0 auto. So 0 margin on the top and bottom, and then right and left margin can be auto. And now you can see about Joven, and here we have this, and then here we have this image, and it's all nicely centered. Okay, so it remains centered, and then it goes out here and it becomes small. Okay, and maybe we can also add some padding here. Let's see, let's add a padding of maybe 8 pixels just so that it doesn't touch the edges. Okay. And if we've added padding here, then maybe we don't need this padding here over here. Maybe we just need a padding right. 8 pixels. Okay, so this is what web developers sit and do all day. They fiddle around with small CSS settings just to get things to look exactly as they desire. But this is looking fine to me. I think the about section looks good, largely. Yeah, somewhere around that is looking good. Yes, this is slightly falling over into the next outside, but that's okay. Okay, so now we're done with the about Jovian section. Let's go ahead and fix the job opportunities section. So I'm going to go in and under job opportunities, okay, once again the H2 as well, I'm going to add a center. So H2, I'm going to say text align center. Okay, now this has centered. Then I can go in and I can maybe again create another outer div called jobs. So I create a div called jobs. So let me give it the ID jobs. All right. And again for jobs, I'm going to set a maximum width. So max width for jobs is 800px. And I'm going to set margin 0 auto. And I'm going to set padding 0 8px. Okay, all I'm doing is I'm creating an outer div into which I can then put in all my jobs. So let me grab all these jobs. And this is all the footer. Yeah, all this point. Till this point, we have the jobs. I'm going to put it under the jobs div. And let me reload again. And you can see that it has this nice, it remains centered on the screen. That's nice. Pretty good. Remains centered on the screen. And it is also not touching the edge of the screen. So generally you want to have some space from the edge of the screen here. So that's it. Okay. Then we have this H3 over here. There's a lot of space between front-end developer and then Bengaluru, India. So how about we come in? This is an H3. Remember, it's an H3. Let's give it a class called job role, so that we don't affect other H3s on the page if we had any. At the moment we don't, but yeah. Okay. And let me come in here, H3, and let us just give it margin bottom 0. I believe it's a margin. Let's see. Okay. Margin bottom 0. This is looking good. Now it is much closer. Maybe 0 is too little. Maybe let's make it 8px. Maybe 4px should do the job. So normally with margins and paddings, you want to use multiples of 4. That's a good idea. And you want to go double, 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 half, half, half. And that's a quick way to work around this stuff. Okay, now what would be nice if we could also get that nice apply button or apply link here on the job page. So I'm going to again show you a quick trick. We're going to learn a lot more about things like flexbox, etc. But a quick trick to just get one single element pulled to the right side is using something called a float. So I'm going to show you right now. So let me say a href equals nothing for now. And let me just put in apply. And let me give this a class as well. And this class is also called apply. And let me put it above every H3 here. Okay, so now we have this apply, apply, apply that is going to show up above every H3. And I think I can go in and I can fix the margin top as well for this H3 to be 0. Yeah, so now we have apply, apply, apply. And what we can do is take the apply class. So dot apply, that is a class given to this apply link. And here, I'm just going to add one thing, float right. Okay, so that's just going to pull this apply all the way to the right. That's nice. It's going to just pull it all the way to the right. And I think we need probably under the location, we need some spacing. So I'm going to go back and add some location, add some spacing under location. So we have class location, and class location has already had, we've added the color gray. Let me add margin bottom 16px. Okay, that's a span. So that's another learning. Margins don't work for spans. I know it's confusing, happens all the time. Margins don't work for spans. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to change these spans to divs. Okay. Margins and paddings don't apply to spans because they are inline elements. So I'm going to change these all to divs. And now it's going to apply. Okay, great. So this is looking nice. Now we have the front-end developer, we have Bangalore, India, and we've pulled this or we've floated this apply link to the right. So that's nice. One thing that I would want to do now is maybe get rid of these underlines under these links. These underlines aren't looking that great. So I'm just going to go in and then for all the anchor tags, I'm going to remove the underline. How do you remove the underline? All the anchor or the link tags? Well, remove underline from a tags CSS. I just search that and it says that it can be removed using the text decoration property. So you can say text decoration none and that should do it. So if I go text decoration none, that should hopefully get rid of all the underlines. Great. We have gotten rid of all the underlines as well. Now we have these apply links as well. Last thing is the footer. I think we're almost there. We just need this footer at the end. So let me come in and once again, let me create this div called footer. Okay, it's already there. So I'm just going to give it the ID footer. Okay. And then we have this list. Let me just call it, let me give it the ID footer links. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of things. First, I'm going to give the footer. So dot, it's an ID, so hash footer. I am going to give it the background color gray or something very light gray. Let's see, Gainsborough. Okay, that looks like a nice grayish color. Oh, what is the lightest gray we can find? Let's search for a very light gray. Ghost white. Okay, that is interesting. Let me just get ghost white. Yeah, that's a very light grayish color. You may not even be able to see it on the screen, but it's there. Then for the footer links, I want to get rid of these bullet points. And let me just bring that up here. So for the footer links, I want to get rid of the bullet points and I just want to keep them all on the same line. So I am going to say footer links. And again, this is something that I would look up normally, but I happen to remember it. What the way you can get rid of these bullet points is to say list style none. I believe that should do it. And now you can see that the bullet points are gone. Now, of course, for the footer itself, it might be nice to maybe add some padding at the top and bottom and maybe all around. So let me just add a padding of 8px. And okay, now the footer is looking nice too. And maybe let me also add some margin top. The footer is too close to the data scientist job role. Let me add a margin top. I'm going really fast, but I'm expecting you to follow along here, pause, follow along, and maybe also look up what each of these properties mean because that's really how you do web development. 16px, so let's add a margin. Let's see. Did not do anything. Maybe let's make that 32px. Yeah, that increased it. So remember our location also has a margin. So the margins collapse into each other. All of that happens. Okay, final thing, we want to make these list items come up in line. So there, whenever you have three divs showing one below the other, and you just want to show them all in line. Now, another quick way to do it is, well, we could just do, I think, display flex, and that would do it. Yeah, display flex, and that should do it for footer links. We can also add, but I want to show another way to do it. And this is something that you can set on individual list items. So you can say footer links li, and that is going to select the li items under the id footer links. And I'm going to say display inline. Okay, and you can see now they're showing up inline. So the difference between flex and inline is flex is something that you apply on the parent, and that applies to all the items within it. And then inline is something that you apply to the child element. Let's say you went into one of these list items and applied inline, only that would appear inline instead of block, which is the entire horizontal width. But here we are applying to all the list items, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But apart from the inline, we also want to add a margin. So let's add, we don't need a margin at the top. Let's add maybe 16 pixels of margin on the left and right. So let's add the margin here. Let's reload. Okay, so now we have a margin. And the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to say text align center, and that is going to center these links on the page. Okay. And in fact, text align center can be done not just for footer links, but for the entire footer itself. We can do it like that. And finally, let's fix this as well. So let's go in and let's call this copyright class equals copyright. And let's come back in here. And well, we could also give it an ID, but fine, class is fine. Copyright, and let's give it the color gray. Okay, so that is our page. I think that is looking pretty good. So we have the nav bar at the top, we have this banner, and this banner always occupies the entire length and it doesn't stretch the image too much. Then we have this about Jovian section that is always at the center. And then we have the job opportunities that are also in the center. If we want, we can experiment with the colors of these. And finally, we have these apply links. They don't do anything right now, but wouldn't it be nice if they could at least maybe trigger some sort of an email? And that's where I want to introduce you to another form of link called mail to links. Okay, so just search for mail to links. What is a mail to links? Well, you can do this. Instead of having a link point to some website on the internet, you can have a link, say mail to colon and then some email address. And when the user clicks on that link, it is going to open their email application, whether it's Gmail or whatever email application they're using. It is going to open their email application and put in this address in the subject line. Okay, so that's a very interesting hack. So this is what we can use here for our apply. So I can go in here into apply. Where is my apply? Yeah. So I can go in here and in the href, I can say mail to, I can just say mail to support@jovian.com. Okay. And let me come in here and let me say mail to support@jovian.com and mail to support@jovian.com and reload the page. Now, if I click the apply button, you can see that it opens my mail application, which is Gmail, and it has automatically filled in the address support@jovian.com. Okay, and then here you can actually then fill out the subject and you can send an email. So essentially what we're saying is when the user clicks on the apply button, that is going to trigger their email client and they can just send us an email that they're interested in a particular job. One thing that we can also do is we can also put in a subject here. So we can say mail to, and you can just say subject. You can say question mark subject after the email address equals front end, and question mark subject equals backend, and question mark subject equals data scientist, or just say data. All right, and I'll also add a target underscore blank so that it opens in a new page. Underscore blank, and let's add target equals underscore blank, and let's add target equals underscore blank. Okay, so now each of these mail to links is going to have a different subject and it's going to open a new tab. You can see here that it has automatically added the subject front end, and you can construct more complex subjects, and in fact you can also set up some kind of a body directly as well. And similarly, you can go in here and let's click on backend developer, and it fills up the subject backend, and you can go in click on the data scientist and it fills up the subject data. Okay, great. And then all these other links are working fine as well. I think I'm very happy with this. I'm very happy with this web page at this point. So I'm just going to save it, and let's see. I'm just going to reset the zoom level. Okay, so this looks good at the normal zoom level, and it contains everything that I'm looking for. I have the header, I have the banner, I have this section, I have some text on the left, I have something on the right. Yep, I have a couple of links here as well. I have the job opportunities, and I have locations. I have this apply button, and then I have this footer, and then I have this copyright at the end as well. Great. So I'm feeling very happy with this web page. Now the final step, now that we have completed this web page, the final step is to go ahead and deploy it. So this is what it looks like roughly. Now we can deploy this web page to the cloud. Now we're going to cover deployment extensively over the course of this program or the course of this next few lessons as well. And there are many ways to deploy a website to the cloud. There are hundreds of platforms, but the simplest thing is to just upload a zip file, right? Wouldn't it be nice if we could just zip up our web page and just upload it on the cloud? Well, that is what you can do using this platform called static.app. And there are a bunch of these platforms, but static.app allows you to simply drag drop an archive with your page or a website in it, and it will take care of the rest. Okay. It'll automatically set up a website for you. Now, here is what we do. First, we have to make sure that we have an index.html page. So there is this convention in HTML that a file called index.html is going to be the root page of a website. Okay, or the root page. So when you open jovian.com, that's actually opening jovian.com/index.html. So let's go back here and let us rename webpage.html to index.html. So let's rename this to index.html. And then let us go and zip up this folder. So we have this folder over here, which has a index.html file, which is the sort of the root page or the root web page, and it has a bunch of other files and images as well. I'm going to zip it up. So I'm going to say compress, and depending on your operating system, you may have a different way to zip things. And then on static.app, I'm just going to click upload for free. I am then going to upload this zip file over here, and that is going to then ask me to maybe pick a domain name. So it's going to be a subdomain of .static.app. So let me just put it as Jovian, Jovian. Can't spell my own company name. Okay, and let me just put in an email here. Sydney is the account I'm using, sydney@jovian.com. And let me put in the name here, Sydney Carton. Okay, let me put in a password here. I'm not going to say that. And let me just accept the terms of privacy, and let me just say continue. Okay, looks like this email has been taken. Let me just provide a slightly different email. Yeah. So now that is going to ask me to verify my email. I've uploaded the zip file already. So I'm just going to go ahead and verify the email. I am going to, let's see, let's open up email.com. And here is the account. And here is the verification link. Okay. Now my email is verified. And now you can see that joviancareers.static.app, this website is getting deployed. Okay, so let's give that a couple of minutes. Looks like it is deployed. So let's maybe go and check it out. Let me just click joviancareers.static.app. And yes, looks like this website is already deployed. And in fact, you can open it up on your end as well. And because we have set up this page, webpage.html as index.html, that is why it's opening up directly. But I can also just type index.html and it'll open the exact same page. Okay. Not only that, remember we have this other page called boxmodel.html. Well, boxmodel.html should open up just fine as well. There you go, boxmodel.html. And in fact, if we had a link here from index.html to boxmodel.html, then that link would work properly as well. And you can see that both these images got uploaded as well. So that is how you deploy a site. The simplest way to deploy a site is to just zip up your code and put it up online. You don't need any Git, AWS, deployment commands, etc. It's all really simple to do. Okay. And that's it. So let's take a quick summary of the whole thing. Here's what we did. We created an HTML file we created a folder on our desktop. We put in an HTML file into it. We added some code into it using VS Code, and then we tried to view it in a browser. Then we, using some basic HTML tags like HTML head, title, body, div, etc., we created a web page. Then we used some more HTML tags, h1 to h6, p, list, links, etc., to structure content on a web page. So remember this piece. Before we added any CSS, we just put up a bunch of content on the web page, and here is what it looked like. Then we learned how to apply styles using CSS, so cascading style sheets. The way we saw that we can apply styles inline, we can apply styles using the style tag, we can apply styles using CSS files. And the key idea is you have a selector, and then you have a property and a value. Then we looked at the different kinds of selectors. We have tag selectors, we have ID based selectors, and we have class selectors. Then we learned the CSS box model, which is how you have content, and then around the content you can add padding. And the padding is also shares the same background. And then the padding is inside the border. The border is something that you can set width for. And then outside you have margin, and margins can overlap for side-by-side elements. And then we implemented a wireframe using excalibur.com, and we then tried to replicate this wireframe within CSS by adding a bunch of CSS properties starting from the top. So we picked section by section. We added a nav bar, we added a logo in it, we fixed the banner, we fixed this section about Jovian, then we went into job opportunities, and then we added a footer, right? So that's what we did. And finally, we just deployed our website to the cloud using static.app. We just went to static.app, created a zip file, renamed our main page to index.html, and uploaded that zip file, verified our account, and it is deployed as a, so it is deployed. Where is it? Yeah, it is deployed as a subdomain of static.app. But within static.app itself, you can also go into settings and actually configure a custom domain. So you can actually put this on joviancareers.com or something like that. You can go and you'll have to upgrade your plan, you'll have to pay, but you can set up a custom domain. You can just set up a domain like joviancareers.com, and you can set up some DNS settings and make sure that that is where your web page shows up. So that's not bad for a first lesson. We probably spent about 2 hours, 2 hours, 15 minutes if we exclude the breaks, and we were able to build a pretty good functional website. And clicking on this website, the actual functionality is also present because you can click apply and you can actually go ahead and send out an email to the Jovian team to apply for a job. So that's how simple HTML and CSS really is once you can become familiar with just the most basic parts. Now, of course, there's a lot more to it. There are tables, there are forms, there are various CSS properties, flexbox, etc. But what I want you to take away here is that you should try to first figure out what you want to build and try to build it using what you already know, and then just try to learn as you go along the things that you don't already know. Okay. And here are some references that you can check out. You can find the completed code for this lesson. It may be slightly different because we've done this live. You can find the completed code for this lesson here. You have this index.html over here. So that's great. And then you have maybe some beginner friendly HTML and CSS tutorials in case you want to look at other tutorials as well after practicing this. You can go and check that out. So htmldog.com is something that I found very simple to follow along with. But if you want some interactive HTML tutorials, you can go to w3schools.com. And if you want more detailed and comprehensive tutorials, check out MDN or Mozilla Developer Network. You can check that out as well. They have fairly detailed tutorials and a lot of text, a lot of explanation as well. So take your pick depending on how new you are, depending on how comfortable you feel after practicing this lesson, after watching this lesson and practicing it, writing out all the code by hand. You can pick whichever other tutorial you want to take. And some of the other things you can look at is the loremipsum.io. This is the text generator that we normally use. So that's something that you can use to generate text when you want to fill a page. If you want to learn about the CSS Box Model, you can check out this YouTube tutorial. There is this website called csstricks.com. This has a lot of great guides on various topics in CSS. Don't recommend doing all these guides, but whenever you're working on a particular topic, if you need to maybe get help with a particular topic in CSS, you can check it out. And normally you can just search online and you'll find something good enough. And then if you want to create more advanced mail to links, so you can use this mail to link.me and you can craft maybe a very interesting mail to link, which can have a two-line, a subject line, a body, and a bunch of other things as well. You can add CC, BCC, all of that too.